Thank all of you for joining us for session number 7 of the 12 Days of FileMaker 12 series sponsored by FM Academy. FM Academy is a consortium of leading FileMaker developers, trainers, and consultants. All FM Academy members are platinum level members of the FileMaker Business Alliance with a purpose to further educate FileMaker users and developers through this 12 Days of FileMaker 12 series of webinars. Today's talk is going to be about the design surface behavior changes going from FileMaker 11 to FileMaker 12. Our presenter today is Samir Khan. Samir is a certified developer and trainer with Anvil DataWorks. Anvil DataWorks is a Baltimore and Washington-based firm that services the Mid-Atlantic region. If you would like to revisit this webinar, you will find a link to this and past webinars at FileMakerAcademy.com, AnvilDataWorks.com, as well as FM Academy's YouTube channel. Please welcome today's presenter, Samir Khan.
Thanks, Chris, and welcome again, and thank you for attending the webinar. Today we're going to talk about the design service changes, the behavior changes from FileMaker 11 to FileMaker 12. The first thing we should cover, I think, is what's the design surface. Now, this is just a fancy definition, content area of a window object. This area is where you drop views and other visual objects, and is also where you manipulate those objects directly. It's just really a fancy way of saying we're referring to actually the layout, the defined width and height as the design surface in FileMaker. There are some general changes from FileMaker 11, and we'll look at all of these. I just want to go through them real quickly. FileMaker 12 is going to use a point system rather than pixels for measurement. We'll talk about the reason for that. There's a max layout size change. It used to be 8,000 by 8,000. Now it's going to be 32 by 32,000. Patterns and effects are no longer supported. The selection process is going to change a little bit, especially how we're going to be working with objects in the layout. There's, of course, I'm sure you've heard of the new theme management. We'll look at the grid options. The rulers have changed, and unfortunately we have lost the T-squares. I was actually pretty fond of the T-squares. Some of the nifty stuff that's changed the layout. We can now add background images, and we can use gradient. There's going to be some parent-child behavior, which we'll look at, and we'll talk about what's going to happen. We can add corner radiuses now to all of our objects. We've got explicit width that we can work with on the layout. We'll also look at the stencils for predefined and also custom screen sizes. It's really helpful when you're designing for the iPad or the iPhone. And then lastly, we'll look at the dynamic and the custom guides. So I'm going to bring up, let's hide this, and let's look at FileMaker 11 and FileMaker 12. Okay, I've just built a simple contact screen here, contact database, first name, last name, email, phone, date of birth, and some sort of contact type. The layouts are exactly the same measurements, same fonts, everything. What I wanted to show was the differences here in layout management, the new tools and so forth. So if we look at points, one of the first things visually that we can see, we look in FileMaker 11, the pill slider size versus FileMaker 12. So it's insinuating that there is more room going to the right. As I mentioned, the maximum size is now in FileMaker 11. It was, and previous versions, I believe 8,000 by 8,000. That's definitely FileMaker 11. Remember the older versions. And then in FileMaker 12, we're going to have 32,000 points. Now, one of the things that's changed, one of the big changes here, FileMaker Pro now manages layouts and objects using points rather than pixels. On most computer screens, 1 point is going to equal 1 pixel, but on higher resolution displays, the Retina displays on the iPhone, for example, FileMaker Pro manages the display conversion to ensure proper screen rendering. By default, layout objects can be moved in 1-point increments. The inspector can be used to place layout objects and parts as intermediate values for precise sizing and placement of printed output. Basically, what we're saying is that for the most part, 1 point is going to equal 1 pixel on most machines. You can see the differences here. FileMaker 11, our base measurement was pixels, and in 12, base measurement will be points. There are some differences graphically that at first is not going to be evident, but later on as you start to work with the system, you'll notice that the point system will matter, especially when moving objects around. If we take a look in FileMaker 11, if I move an object around, my pixels are limited to 433 pixels. I can't do anything like put in decimal places. Okay, it's just going to round it off to the correct pixel position. In FileMaker 12, I do have that ability of dropping in, let's put in 75.221, I'm sorry. Okay. I can go to 3 decimal places for points. It's just a more precise measurement tool. And we'll see that in the inspector going forward as we move things around. Some custom measurements will start to show up. Not so evident. Let's maybe select a few items. Okay. Now, patterns and effects are no longer available in FileMaker 12. We mentioned in 11 we had this option of building patterns. If I wanted to take a field, for example, and make the fill color some sort of pattern. It's not available in FileMaker 11, and actually what we'll need to do, I'm sorry, in 12, what we'll need to do is instead use a background image, and when we select that, pick some sort of image. Okay, I'll want to tile that image, and anything that I want specifically, I'll have to just design as an image and then bring it in as a background image for the field or for the object. Effects are the same way. Now keep in mind anything that's converted. Effects, if you remember from FileMaker 11, I had embossed, engraved, and drop shadow as these 3 effects. Of course, none for effects that are available that I could apply to any object, and embossed gives that appearance that it's on top of the object, engraved, carved in, and drop shadows if it's floating above the object behind it. That's not available in FileMaker 12. We do it with graphical representation of borders. Anything that you bring over from FileMaker 11, if you convert a file over, those items will contain that effect. If you remove it, it's gone. If you leave it alone, it'll stay there. That also goes for anything that you copy and paste in as well. The selection process has changed, and it's actually a pretty major change. In 11, when I selected an object, I had 4 anchor points to define what was selected. If I select multiple objects, one requirement was that I had to draw a marquee box around all of the anchor points of all the objects I want to select. So if I look at an object, here are the 4 anchor points. In order to mass select these 2 objects, I have to make sure my marquee box goes all the way around these objects. And then they'll show as selected by the 4 anchor points. It's a bit obscure. It's a little difficult to look at, and I know that there was some development issue sometimes. We wouldn't know something was selected, go to move something or go to change text or color format, and we found that the wrong object was modified. In 12, they changed the selection process. Anything that your mouse touches is going to be selected. The selection area is highlighted by multiple anchor points that were added in the center, vertically, and horizontally. Okay, just easier to select and move objects around. The difference here is it's reversed from what FileMaker 11 used to be. In 11, in order to simulate that process of anything that my mouse marquee box touches is selected, in order to simulate that, I had to hold down the Command key on Macintosh or the Control key on Windows, and I get this gray selection box. Anything it touches is selected. It's flipped now. It's reversed in 12. So in order to get that old process, making sure everything is inside the marquee box, I have to use that Command Control modifier key, and then I'll get this gray box, which will only select items where the 4 anchor points fall within the marquee box. And so it's the reverse of what 11 used to be. Now, one thing we can take a look at just for a second here is the theme management in FileMaker 12. We mentioned it in a previous webinar. You go to if you have a layout defined and you go to the Layouts menu, the option of changing the theme. We have the option of changing themes. Now, anytime I change a theme, all the objects on the layout will take this new format. So if I pick condensed light or contrast screen or one of my semi-rounded river, if I apply this theme to a layout, all the images and the cascade style sheets, the CSS files that are associated with this theme copy to the layout. So you are adding to file size just by selecting a theme. One thing to keep in mind, if you're picking themes to evaluate what your system will look like, be careful what theme you're picking, how many you're picking, because you're adding to the file size of the total file size of your system. Probably won't be huge, but I think when FileMaker mentioned it was about 4.5 megs when they added all of the themes to a layout. When you apply a theme, we'll just pick one here just so we can look at it. Now, some conversion issues you'll see if I'm working with Classic.
Samir?
Yes.
I hate to interrupt you, but there's a lot of background noise we're hearing. Is there something you can address to that?
I'm not sure. It's not on my side. I'm hearing it as well. I'm wondering if someone maybe is unmuted and doesn't realize it.
I'll look into it on my end. Thanks.
Okay. Now, if we take a look, some of the items that we'll see when we apply conversion to these themes, as you can see, some of the fields, the font size, the default font size was 12, but we were working with a different font. So you can see that it went from Helvetica to Tahoma, and there's some size issues. Just to keep this in mind, if you're applying themes, that this is going to occur. And just to be aware of it so that you can go in and fix these. You fix them very quickly. Some of the things that are applied when we work with themes, in the inspector especially, bring this guy up. First we want to look at the object selection. You can note, you'll see that there's when just going with selection here, it's a small highlight there and an object selected. I also have style control now that's available. And we did mention this in another webinar, but just to reiterate, that I can remove styles from an object, and then I can take that object and reapply styles to it. I can also copy styles from a different layout and paste them on objects. So if I take this style here, let's remove it, take this style, and now I will copy the style and I can paste it to other objects. Just an interesting control option there. It means that if I design something custom that I want to copy the style for, if I take this and I change the font color, change the line point color, right, and now I want to take this and copy the style and apply it to multiple objects. And I can go through this as a hold. I can go to other layouts and apply the same style to my objects. So it's a nice little feature for additional theme control. One of the major changes here from 11 to 12, let's go back to, so we can look at this in two similar. Okay. So they're at least the same. One thing that changed in two things, and I'll just mention them both at the same time. Two things that changed from 11 to 12 that I found that were really nice. First was the rulers. If you remember in 11, in order to see the ruler lines, the graphic or the text rulers, it was two options to turn them both on, the text and the graphics. And it was a little confusing because if you just turned on text rulers, you only get the top bar. If you turn on graphic rulers, you get both. So it was a little confusing on which one to select. They made it a little bit easier, I think, in 12. Let's just bring my inspector up. Okay, there's just one option now for rulers. The second thing was the grid. In 11, you were limited. It was called ruler lines. You were limited. These lines are at 100 pixel markers. You couldn't control that. It's just built in. In FileMaker 12, they changed the grid system. One, I can show the grids. I've got major lines, and then I've also got minor lines. I'm not sure. Hopefully, you guys can see that on your end. And I can control that through the Position tab in the inspector. What's the spacing for the grid? Right now it's set to 72, which uses a 36 pixel marker half point, which from what I understand is a comfortable pixel spacing for, or I should say pixel anymore, point spacing for human interface. But we could change this. I could make it 100, and then my minor grid spacing is four sections per major, which would put me at 25 points per section. Okay. I also have that option of snapping to the grid as I'm moving objects around. We'll snap it to the grid, keep it aligned. So these are some of the standard changes, I guess you could say, things that were built into the interface that just require going over. I think that it's good to know this stuff, especially from the developer standpoint. It can be mind-boggling if you don't know where they've made the changes, or you didn't realize that the selection process changed. You go in to modify a layout and destroy it, which we have all done in the past. So I'm going to move on to the second set of information, some of the nifty stuff that's changed. The background images and the gradients. If you remember from FileMaker 11, we didn't really have an option besides controlling a fill color of a part. We really didn't have the option of inserting any background images and working with that information. So we were limited. We had to, I had to come in here. First thing I'll do is decide what my layout size is going to be. I'm going to import some sort of gradient background. So the first thing I'll do is go ahead and set the height. I built the image to be 1024 by 768. So let's just make the height 770 pixels. Let's go ahead and insert the picture. And pics for webinar. And my background image. Okay. Take this guy and We're all familiar with this. Send it to the back. And because it's an image, it's an object, I then also have to lock the image. That way, if I try to select items, it doesn't try to move the image. Okay. And so I'll take this image and lock it. Now I can go in and modify my fields. Let's make them white. Take them on. Whoops. Format. Oh, let's do this. There we go. All right, so bit of a task there, and it did require that I build this image, this gradient image in the background. Let's just zoom out so we can see it. And I had to build it in the background, and it is just an image, so obviously I've got this space on the right side that can still be scrolled to and can be seen. And it required me to go in and design this gradient in a third-party program. So if we look at FileMaker 12's process for this, first we'll look at the gradients since we have this gradient option. Let's just take this layout and give it a gradient background. Click on the body, appearance, and under graphics here in the appearance tab, instead of a solid color, I'm going to go ahead and pick a gradient, and I'll make this, say over on the other side, black. Let's change the angle. I think it's about 255, 225. That looks good. Okay, and make this guy white. And I don't have to worry about locking anything. Send it to the back. It's already there. Let's go ahead and just align our fields a little bit. All right. Grab these guys, and away we go with doing the fill color and so forth. Oh, that was the line point. Turn those in there now. Take these guys, do the same thing. Okay. We took a look at the same layouts, and so we've got two gradients. This one took me about a minute or two to apply. This one actually took me about 5 to 10 minutes because I had to go into a third-party program and draw this very quickly and save it and then bring it into FileMaker. So yeah, it's only a couple minutes, but think about when we do this multiple times, there are other things that we can do with background images and so forth. If we take a look at layout mode, instead of a gradient, let's do a background image. Okay. Let's say that I'm a big StarCraft fan. So what if I wanted to design a layout that used, again, I wouldn't recommend this, you might get in trouble, but used the StarCraft background. And then what I can do, just kind of goofing around here a little bit, but I like their interface. I'm going to hide the grid because it's actually a little overwhelming right now. Let's hide that grid for a second. Apply a couple of things. Maybe cover this guy up. We don't need to see all the quick match information, so we'll take that and we'll just make it a fill color. Okay. Or you know what? Let's be fancy and we'll just make it a gradient. Take that and make it a gradient. Make it a dark blue. Darker. Let's change the angle, and I'm going to do it a little customly. So grab this line and move my gradients to where I want it. Okay, like this left to right diagonal here. All right. Grab all these fields. Don't need that. Move these guys down here. As well, I have to bring to the front. Okay, so I can have a little bit of fun. I can put buttons out on the layout. This image is now the background of my database. Okay. That's an interesting way of starting to use background images. We can build a nice background and some of the header sections, even if we're going to fill it with our own buttons and build our own little sections for the data, we can drop that information right on the screen here, cover up the background image. Okay, so we start thinking about a layering system in FileMaker. I'll just get rid of that for now. Go back to the gradient. Okay. One of the nicer features, in my opinion as well, is this idea of parent and child ownership in layout object, and almost considering it a stacking quality of ownership here, where objects that contain other objects will be parents. If they're moved, if they're resized, they contain their children. One of the things in FileMaker 11, if I were to draw a tab portal, I'm sorry, a tab control, I put some items in there, and I take this and I resize it. These items are no longer part of this tab control. They've just been moved out, even though I initially kept them in there, right? These three are the only ones that stayed within the tab control. They were still in there. In FileMaker 12, what they've done is give it a sense of ownership. So if I have a tab control, I put objects in there, and I go to resize this object, what it does is it'll crop or clip the items within the object. They'll stay with this item, even if I move it around as well. They will not be broken from the tab or the parent ownership. And one of the big factors with this will be, if I'm dealing with portals, anyone that's developed before knows that when I put a portal out on a layout and I've got fields attached to it, and I go to move that portal in 11, it moves the portal. In 12, it keeps its owners. I'm sorry, it keeps its children. We look at it in 11. Oops, I don't have a relationship. We'll just make a bogus function. Okay. Completely invalid. I wouldn't recommend doing what I just did. But if you wanted to create a portal very quickly, we want to add a couple of fields. Okay. When I go to move that portal, fields are left behind. The only thing that moves is the portal. FileMaker 12, the parent owns the children, so when I move this, the children go along for the ride. Resizing with this is also the case where it will just clip the items instead of dropping them out of the portal. Okay. So there's a sense of parent and child ownership there. We looked at corner radiuses, but one thing that's nice is I can combine them to create some interesting visual effects. We don't have corner radiuses in 11, so this is a new thing here. I can apply corner radiuses to just about everything. So if I wanted to take this portal, for example, add a 20 rounded radius, but you know I didn't want the top, so I'll remove those. Just give me a rounded kind of feel at the bottom there. And then what I'll do instead is create headers. Grab all these guys. Maybe do some resizing. They're all the same size here. And do a little bit of formatting so I can get this to look the way I want it to. apply some solid lines, and let's give it a quarter radius of 20. 1 point. And the color will be a dark gray. But I don't want the bottoms. I don't want that one. Okay. I can see some issues there. Maybe I would just go ahead and center it. Make it a little bit taller and drop it in the center of the box. Take this, copy, paste, paste. Now, obviously they aren't the same, so I'll go ahead and fix these up just real quickly. Again, using my tools that I already have, just resize them and give it a little bit of effect, right? So this one doesn't need actually any rounded corners, but this one needs that corner. Okay. And get it sized up just right. I know it's not my best work, but you can see here, built a nice looking header, nice rounded looking object here, which would list the records in the portal. Again, gives us some more control over the graphics and design of the system. And I like that. It looks good to me, and especially if you're going to start doing mobile development. This is pretty common. You look on mobile devices when you group things together. If you have fields for data entry, you've got these rounded-ish corners, and things look like one element, one object. Okay, the new feature in FileMaker is explicit width of a layout. Right now I have the height at 476, and the width is at 1400, so we'll change this back to 600? A little too much. Let's go to 800. Toss that. Right. Explicit width won't be immediately distinguishable unless you have themes applied. Even the classic theme, even though the explicit width exists, explicit width means that anything to the right of this line that does not exist in Browse, Find, or Preview mode, but is still accessible by certain items such as scripts and so forth. It won't show that object, but it also won't show the explicit width. We've actually got to go in and apply some sort of theme before the explicit width is displayed on screen. And it's not necessarily a feature or a bug. I think that it's just when you're in classic mode, it acts like FileMaker Classic. Some things to keep in mind. I'm just finicky, I know, I'm sorry. When we're working with the explicit width, anytime you take an object and you break the anchor on the left side, the explicit width no longer exists. Because what we're doing is we're anchoring, by releasing the anchor on the left edge, we're saying that this object will free float based off of the size of the window. It's not the case when this has the left anchor on and the right anchor. Okay? That will just cause a resize. Explicit width, again, is still, the explicit width of the layout is still displayed, but this is going to stretch out. It's slightly different. Unanchoring and anchoring will basically render the explicit width display as non-existent. Even though anything you put there will still not be shown on the screen, the size of that layout will stretch out because you're using these anchor points either to stretch or to slide across the screen. One thing we want to look at too, this is another new feature, and it's part of the design surface. Working with stencils. When you're developing, you want to know what your screen size is going to be. This is extremely important when you're dealing with mobile development. Mobile development, iPad, iPhone, uses specific measurements for its portrait and its landscape modes. Okay, so if I use these stencils, it will give me an idea. It won't give me an idea, it will give me the exact measurement of the screen in FileMaker. And this includes the status toolbar. So if we look at the iPad stencils, okay, there's the bottom there. This is where points are going to matter. Pixels and points are going to be different when we're working on a high-resolution iPad or iPhone. So these stencils will matter, and the points will matter. But I can use these stencils to help me create my layouts. Now you notice here, I'm going to just turn these off, along with some predefined desktop screen sizes. Okay, I'm going to work on 1024/768. My client, this is their standard screen size. Add the stencil there and just build all of your layouts to fit within this stencil. I could do it by eye. I could also use the inspector to define this, what's the height and the width. Okay, but now I have this workable screen, my design surface, to the exact measurements of the screen. Along with these predefined, I can create my own custom size stencils. If you're working with larger screens, smaller screens, I think the lowest was 800 by 600. No, 640 by 480. I don't know if you have a screen less than 640 by 480. I don't know. I'm not even sure if it'll run FileMaker. It might be that you have a too low of a video card there. But I can add my own custom sizes for smaller or larger stencils. Just depends on what you're doing. The last two items that we're going to talk about, and then we'll move over to the Q&A. The dynamic and the custom guides in FileMaker 12. In 11, I mentioned it earlier. I was fond of the T-squares. I used them a lot, and it was because I wanted to make sure things were lining up correctly, and not just a small grouping here, but when we look at the grand scheme of a layout, we want to make sure that things align properly. And so everything should be aligned to this left margin. If I'm working with a series of fields across the screen, okay, those should all line up to this T-square. There shouldn't be any off of this. The issue was that I only had two. And so the T-square was limited there as far as what I could do with the T-squares, with these lines, these markers. In FileMaker 12, what we've done, oh, I want to make sure those are on. What's happened is instead of T-squares are gone. We have guides that we can use. You can have numerous guides out on the layout. All I need to do is start up here at the top through my measurement and drag and drop a guide out onto my layout. And as you can see, I can have multiple guides. This will give you the feel, the feel of Adobe programs where I can design an area to work with. All of my fields need to fit in this section. And, okay, this kind of gap or spacing needs to occur. So I'll put these guides here to work with them. If I right-click on guides, I have an option just to do things with them, lock them in place, share the guide with all of the layouts, which will actually change the color of it to pink. If I were to create a new layout, this guide would show up at the same point marker. Okay, if I need to get rid of them, right-click and remove. I can also just drag it off of the screen. drag it back up or to the left, and they'll disappear. Okay. The last little feature here that we want to look at, I'm going to go ahead and drop one field out here so we can look at this. Working with the dynamic guide system, the dynamic guides, right now I turned them off just so we wouldn't show. There are a couple things that are associated with this. One, if you notice as I move objects around, I've got a box that will give me the X and Y coordinates of the object, and that's the upper left-hand corner. So we'll say the top left corner, X and Y coordinates as I move objects around. You'll also notice there's a blue line there. It's aligning my field to the label. So what I want to do is start building these fields again, and I'm going to use these guides to help me. Because what I want to do is build this very quickly. Okay. And as you can see, the guides will start taking some of this information into account. Okay, I want those lined up, the edges. Let's take a look at this field. What's the center? What's the gaps? It's covered right now by this yellow box, but you can see the one right above it. It's kind of showing me that my gapping is looking all right. This one's a little off, so I might want to tweak this a little bit. Okay. Kind of get it right. Okay, that looks good. That looks good. So these are all evenly distributed, and I didn't really need to go in and use any menus to do this. Last name, phone number. Okay. So the dynamic guides are going to give me a way of building layouts, making sure things are lined up and evenly spaced just at a glance. So as I'm adding objects, I'm one of these guys that loves to drag this guy down and, hey, let's check the spacing. Yeah, that looks good. Let's do that. Let's do another one. Yeah, okay. Into drawing them. Okay, same thing. Get my dynamic guides, which will allow me to line them up. Now I see some issues. That's where these standard tools will come into play, right? Let's get all these guys and align the left edges. And I do notice some spacing issues, so instead of using the dynamic guides, I'll go ahead and distribute the space evenly. And then these can, let me just get these lined up real quickly. All of this can be turned off if you go to the View menu. See some stuff that's bothering me. It's on the right edges there. Sorry, I'm finicky. Even this is just an example file. I do like that I can align those up pretty quickly and get the spacing properly. And using a combination of tools from 11, tools from 12 to build that very quickly. All of the guides can be turned off, so if it is causing problems, you're moving things around, and that's just driving you crazy. All those blue lines flashing all over the place. You can turn them off. Maybe if you like to do it the old-fashioned way and just grab some T-squares, multiple T-squares, and get the alignment that way. We can do it that way as well. And again, you can turn these off if you'd like to share them with other layouts, lock them in place so they don't move accidentally. Okay. So what I'm going to do is let's pass this back over to Chris and field some questions. Let's see what the question pool looks like.
Thanks, Samir. There's a couple of questions in here. If anybody has questions, we have plenty of time for question and answer. First question here, does FileMaker 12 have the ability to go beyond 11 pages? In other words, I guess they're asking if the layout will extend beyond the point at which it used to. So I guess when you're printing, you can print beyond 11-page layout.
The so let's see here. The points pixels will matter for the page markers. So your page margin, this is just a standard, I guess, 750, we'll say. So 750. You said 11 pages. 10 to 11, I guess that sounds about right. Right? Our old limit was 8,000 pixels, height and width. So 8,000 by 8,000. FileMaker 12's new limits are 32,000. Sounds like you'll get about 40. Is that 40 pages? Oh my gosh, I'm a programmer and I'm horrible at math. We could pull a calculator out, but yeah, that's going to be 4 times what you can get now. So 40-ish pages, 44 maybe, depending on your page margins and printers. So yeah, you'll have an increase.
Great. Does the new theme affect only the current layout?
Then whatever theme you apply will only affect the current layout, yes.
If the status toolbar is hidden, does the stencil account for that also?
That's a great question. If we hide the status toolbar, will the stencil, well, I can't even get to the stencil, but the stencil, I believe, includes for the, or I guess is the question for the iPhone or the iPad, the way that the stencil is defined, it's using a specific point measurement, 320 points by 385 for the iPhone portrait, and landscape is 480 by 255. So my guess is that, don't quote me, I don't like to speculate too much, is that it will be including the status toolbar on the device. This is the measurement including the status toolbar.
Is there the ability, someone's asking if they have the ability to, I guess, take multiple fields and align them in a way so that the spaces are the same between each field? I would guess you would do that the same way as you always would with the align space.
We can use the align tools or the distribute tools. It's right here under space. You can distribute vertically or horizontally. The new dynamic guides will also the new dynamic guides will also tell you if your spacing looks good or not.
Right.
And just by moving it around.
Is there a way to have associated colors of each theme show up in the color palette?
Associated themes of each color? Not by default. The color palette itself comes back as a the color palette itself comes up as is. Any other colors would be marked as other colors, so you'll see it here when we look at the definition of the color. But the theme itself will have these defined. So anytime I add a new object, it's going to use the theme's default properties for that object. If I drew a button out right now, instead of the classic gray button that we used to get, I'm going to get this nice gradient button with no hover and no awkward-looking background shadow, right? Because it's using the theme's defined buttons. So it won't save the color schemes in your palette, but the color schemes will be applied automatically. Now, any customization is going to be affected, and that's where these tools for copying and pasting styles will come into play. Anything that you anything that's defined custom, you'll need to copy the style and then paste it onto another object.
When shrinking a portal with fields and the child field look to be hidden, what is happening to them?
Okay, so they are just being clipped or cropped. The field still exists as is, but it's being cropped by the parent object, the container object.
And do you have any suggestions on using FileMaker 12 with Illustrator?
With Illustrator?
Yes.
PNG is the prescribed format, or we'll say the highly recommended format. But other than that, I don't know if there's anything else I can mention. Unfortunately, I'm not an Illustrator user.
Question, I heard that objects that are off of your design surface will still affect PDF file size. So a high-resolution image placed off of the design surface will still bloat a PDF. Is this correct?
I don't know the answer to that, so I don't want to give an answer and speculate. We could test it if we had a high-resolution image that we could use, but that would be maybe a topic for another webinar, or looking at performance boosters for a system. Unfortunately, I can't answer that question right now. I don't know the answer.
Customers asking, or attendees asking, if he could save color palettes for specific customers. I guess he has customers that use specific color palettes, and he wants to be able to, I guess, group them by customer.
The best way to do that would be to create a template layout that would hold all of your color schemes. That way, that layout can be copied and pasted to any other system. It would also sit within the database and have all of your color schemes predefined. That would be the best way to do it. There isn't any way to save your custom, we'll say any supported way of saving your custom themes or your theme modifications.
Okay, question. In 12, is the right edge of the printed page the same as displays on your design surface? For example, if you have objects off to the right of the design surface but still within the width of your actual paper, will they print or not?
That's a good question. We can actually find that out by let's just do a print preview here. So if I have an object that sits within the page margin, however, is outside of this area, will it be printed? This is going to be my hypothesis that it will not print, because the explicit width is for browse, find, and preview mode. So if we save this, go to browse mode, it's not there. Go to preview mode. Oh. Let me just add a new record. Preview mode, and it is not there.
Okay, this is a comment from attendee Bart is saying that you could create a palette in the color picker. I guess referring to the previous question.
Yes, that's actually a great point. If you do want to save it in that way, you can. If you open up your other color scheme, you can define custom colors down here. So once you've got it, the color that you want, you can drag it and drop it down here and add it as a palette there. That is definitely, now this is going to be specific to the machine, but that would save your palettes. And that's how many you can add.
Question is, since you can't save themes, can you apply a layout to a different file? Would you just copy and paste, I guess, like you would?
Copy and paste. I think if you have two files open, and we can test this real quickly. I have another file open we can use here. Okay, so if I come in here and I take this item, open up my inspector, and I think this will work, and I copy it, then I can take that and I can paste it from file to file. Yes, I can do that. But I can also copy the button, paste it in here, and then apply the same formatting using that format painter or the style copy and paste process. But it would work. It does work through multiple files. Just think that you can't go back to FileMaker 11 and do it because there was no copy of style available. If that's the scenario, then you have to copy it from 11 and paste it into 12.
And someone asking if the color picker is Mac only.
You'll see something similar on Windows. Not exactly the same, but you'll still have that option of saving custom colors. But that is for per machine.
Well, Samir, there are no other questions. I hope I haven't overlooked any, but that appears to be all the questions that we have.
Yeah, I don't see any more. I do want to apologize. I'm not sure where that sound was coming from. I was hearing it as well, and I wasn't sure if it was me or not. So I do want to apologize to everyone out there. If you guys have any questions, or if you wanted to get the follow us on Twitter or get information from blogs, you can check out our website, anvildataworks.com. Also email us at sales@anvildataworks.com or give us a call, 240-425-4431. Lastly, of course, check out FileMakerAcademy.com for upcoming webinars.
We'll see you this Thursday at 2 p.m. where Colin Keefe will discuss server file management. Thanks. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.